Peace to everybody, back with another video. This is sexual assault happens to boys too. And now, as you can see here, is the disgraced singer R. Kelly. He is currently in jail for multiple sex abuse accounts and one bribery charge as well. Last year's documentary series Surviving R. Kelly provided groundbreaking television in an era where many Americans are waking up to the horrors of sexual abuse at the hands of powerful people. It also provided a space for more than a dozen women to speak about the unfathomable abuse that they say the singer inflicted upon them as teens and young women. And so people are waking up right now, and this is all because of last year's documentary series Surviving R. Kelly provided groundbreaking television in an era. And the Americans are waking up to the horrors of sexual abuse because of R. Kelly. The second part of the series, which aired on Lifetime over the weekend, ended up taking a distinct, unexpected turn during its first episode. It allowed a similarly safe space for men to discuss their own traumatic experiences of sexual assault. And so now the men also, they talk about their sexual assault as well. Not just the women, even though most of it has to do with women, but now the men are coming out with it too. This time, R. Kelly's brothers, Carrie Kelly and Bruce Kelly, gave separate interviews with interconnected stories about how the three of them were groomed for molestation, experienced sexual abuse as children, and detailed what they know about the many years of abuse Robert Kelly himself endured through to his early teens. And so now R. Kelly's brothers, Carrie and Bruce Kelly, have told their side of the story of what happened to them when they was young boys. And how they were groomed as well. I guess by the parents or whoever it was. And of course, Bruce Kelly is currently in jail also, but I don't remember what for. And of course, you know, all this is coming out now. Through their stories, the brothers aren't necessarily ignoring a decades-long string of allegations, legal proceedings, and the resulting public outcry tied to R. Kelly. The singer has been dropped from RCA Records. Radio stations have agreed to hashtag mute R. Kelly, and he now sits in jail facing more than 24 charges in 3 states. Instead, his brothers' revelations shed light on how some male survivors live with the pain or replicate it by becoming perpetrators themselves in a society that awards unhealthy models of masculinity, validates myths that have sustained rape culture, and often fails to educate people about healthy sexuality and boundaries. And so the brothers aren't necessarily ignoring a decade-long string of allegations. They're not. They're not ignoring it. They told their side of the story. Legal proceedings and the resulting public outcry tied to R. Kelly. So everything is tied to him. So R. Kelly has been getting away with too much of what he did to the young women when they was younger and everything else. RCA dropped R. Kelly. Radio stations have agreed to hashtag mute R. Kelly. And of course, you know, nothing is easy, but what R. Kelly did was wrong, and now he's got to pay for everything that he has done to these young people or to these young women when they was young. Although some statistics vary, the Male Survivor Support Organization 1 in 6 analyzed numerous studies to estimate that 1 in 6 men and boys have been sexually abused or assaulted throughout their lifetimes. They are also less likely than women and girls to disclose or report these experiences in this installment of the series. Carrie and Bruce shared their experiences alongside analysis by clinical psychologists and survivor advocates. Yes, so the statistics vary. The Male Survivor Support Organization 1 in 6 analyzed numerous studies to estimate that 1 in 6 men and boys have been sexually abused or assaulted throughout their lifetimes. So it can happen to young men too, not just women. They also said in this installment of the series, Carrie and Bruce shared their experiences alongside analysis by clinical psychologists and survivor advocates. So they are definitely coming out with everything now. Someone who struggles with trauma at an early age would be confused about what sex is, what the rules around sex are, and how live a sexual life, said Jody Adwell, a clinical psychologist based in Southern California, later adding that someone who was abused at an early age can have a lifelong struggle of trying to regain control. And so once you've been sexually assaulted, it's hard to deal with it because you have a lifelong struggle, and it's hard to regain control of what you once had, and it makes you feel like you can't trust that person anymore. Even if you have a significant other, no matter what, you're going to have a hard time trusting that person because of everything of what happened. The brothers first detailed how a man in his 60s, otherwise beloved as a kind and generous neighborhood uncle, established goodwill through deeds like distributing free food to people in their neighborhood. Mr. Henry, as they called him, lived in a building where the brothers would practice with their band. And so they had a neighborhood uncle, and established goodwill through deeds like distributing free food. So the neighborhood uncle, he would give out free food to people in the neighborhood. Mr. Henry, they have called him, lived in a building where the brothers would practice with their band, and then started buying us stuff. Back then, I didn't think about it because I was a child, Bruce Kelly's oldest brother said. Before recalling the three of them running out of his apartment after the man presented his genitals to them. "Don't tell nobody," Bruce remembered the man saying as they fled. So the neighborhood uncle that they called him, he was showing his private parts. He also said, "Don't tell nobody." Bruce remembered the man saying as they all three of the brothers had left the building. What Bruce and Carrie describe as a tactic otherwise known as grooming, in which minors are targeted and manipulated by adult perpetrators, often through methods such as buying gifts and offering other incentives to build trust before attempting an abuse act. Although they escaped this particular incident, Kelly's brother said Robert was subjected to the man's routine abuse until one day he paid their mother to not pursue criminal charges. Alright, so the brothers, they described as a tactic otherwise known as grooming. So they were groomed because the neighborhood uncle was buying them gifts and everything and else. Um, One of Kelly's brothers said that Robert was subjected to the man's routine abuse until one day he paid their mother to not pursue criminal charges. So the man paid off the mother not to say anything to the police and that. I mean, not saying nothing to the police, really. I would have just said, no, keep the money. I'm going to tell the police. But instead, this guy paid their mom not to say anything to the police or pursue criminal charges. The neighborhood uncle wasn't the only person who targeted the brothers. An older female family member not only abused Robert, as he noted in the 2018 song I Admit, and through an earlier book and interviews, she also abused Carrie. So there was a woman that was a family member, not only abused Robert, as he noted in the 2018 song I Admit, but she also abused Carrie as well, R. Kelly's brother. I was 6 years old when it first happened, Carrie recalled through tears, adding that he begged her to stop before he mentally dissociated during the assault. I would make believe that I was somewhere else playing with my friends or at the park doing things that kids are supposed to be doing at that age. He also knew that his older brother Robert was being touched by the same relative. So Carrie was 6 years old at the time when he was sexually abused. The tears came from his eyes as well, adding that he begged her to stop before he mentally dissociated during the assaults. He would make believe that he was somewhere else playing with his friends or at the park doing things that kids are supposed to be doing at that age. Robert was being touched by the same relative, but who is the relative though? It couldn't be the mother, whoever it could be the mother, the cousin, the aunt, who? It could be somebody in it has to be a female relative, but who could it have been? Though the scars of sexual assault remain present for boys abused by girls and women, these acts specifically are often not only normalized but even sometimes celebrated. Boys who are sexually exploited and abused even by older women are legally unable to consent to sex, just as girls are. Yet, social programming bound up in unhealthy masculinity instead serves to tactically endorse this kind of abuse by recasting it as becoming a man who can attract women and demonstrate sexual virtuality or other or worse. It results in man-child survivors not fully understanding that they experience sexual abuse. So yeah, so it could happen to the men also, not just women. Although through the scars of sexual assault remain present for boys abused by girls and women, these acts are often not only normalized but even sometimes celebrated. Um, Boys are sexually exploited and abused every day just as much as girls are. Um, Yet social programming bound up in unhealthy masculinity instead serves to tactically endorse this kind of abuse. Um, Also, or worse, it results in male child survivors not fully understanding that they experience sexual abuse. So they're if they're that young, they probably do not understand what it is. Take Chris Brown, who told The Guardian in a 2013 interview that he lost his virginity at age 8 to a teenage girl. It's different in the country, said Brown, who's from the outskirts of Richmond, Virginia. By that point, we were already kind of like hot to trot. You know what I'm saying. So Chris Brown had told The Guardian in 2013 interview that he lost his virginity at the age 8. And why is Chris Brown even in the middle of this? This isn't about Chris Brown, really, but since this is in there, he also said that it's different in the country. Who's from the outskirts? And he's asking who's from the outskirts of Richmond, Virginia. By that point, we were already kind of like hot to trot. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, hot to trot really at age 8? Come on. Nobody would lose their virginity at that age. That is so disgusting. Although what Brown experienced involved a teenager who was below the age of consent for most states, despite what he detailed, the incident isn't different. The encounter was sexual abuse and underscores what can happen when children aren't taught about respecting bodies and boundaries. And that is true, because if you were not taught to respect your boundaries and bodies, then you are definitely going to get abused, no matter what. Incident isn't different. The encounter was sexual abuse, and this is what goes on. And of course, if you have a sexual encounter with somebody under a certain age, then yes, that is considered sexual assault. With the conversations prompted by efforts such as the Surviving R. Kelly series, there may indeed be hope for the future. The second edition of the docuseries prompted a 40% increase in phone calls to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Hotline, as noted by The Root. Yes, so of course, you know, with these docuseries, R. Kelly, the edition of it, docuseries prompted a 40% increase in phone calls. So their phone calls have really gone up. To the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, which is called RAIN. It's a national hotline, as noted by The Root. It's not clear how many of those calls came from men and boys. Even so, more males have come forward in the years since #MeToo began shifting perspectives on sexual assault and abuse. Terry Crews went public in 2017 about a powerful Hollywood executive who groped him without consent, and he continued speaking out despite the onslaught of victim shaming and blaming by those who accept the lie that men like him should be strong enough to not ever be a target of abuse. So Terry Crews came out with his story in public in 2017 about a powerful Hollywood executive who groped him without consent. Of course, and he continues speaking out despite the onslaught of victim shaming and blaming by those who accept the lie that men like him should be strong enough. Sam Thompson, a UK man who was assaulted by 2 men in 2016, retold his story this week to the BBC after one of his perpetrators was recently sentenced to life in prison for 163 rapes. Like Carrie Kelly, he also said he didn't feel like continuing to live after suffering the violent attack, but after initially speaking out a few years ago, he shared a reflection that should be etched into the memory of anyone who seeks to understand and better help male survivors. Yeah, so Sam Thompson, he is also from a UK. He was a man who was assaulted by two men in 2016, retold his story this week to the BBC. And of course, the perpetrators were recently sentenced to life in prison for 163 rapes. So the perpetrators who are sentenced, they're not going to see the daylight ever again. You'd be lucky if you could go into the yard for an hour or who knows how long. But if you're somewhere else in a prison, you're not going to see the daylight. Like Kerry Kelly, he said he didn't feel like continuing to live after suffering the violent attacks, but after initially speaking out a few years ago, he shared a reflection that could be etched into the memory of anyone who seeks to understand and better help male survivors. So Kerry Kelly didn't want to go on like this forever, but he was encouraged to speak out about it. I think that what defines us as men, or supposedly defines us as men, is impacted from the offset as soon as something like this happens. Yeah, so, yeah, this is what he was saying. I think that what defines us as men, or supposedly defines us as men, is impacted from the offset. So, men are getting abused as well. So, and it's just sad that everybody's going through all this mess. The women are the most strongest one to come out with their stories, and the men, they are coming out with their stories, but not as strong as women are. And of course, if you or someone you know needs support, National Helpline for Men Sexually Abused or Assaulted Online, National Sexual Assault telephone number, and of course here's the number right here, and National Suicide Prevention Lifetime, and of course here's that number right there as well. So if you know anybody, or if you or someone you know needs help support, these numbers are right here for you to contact them immediately. Leave your comments below. I am out.